it's okay. We do the same thing to each other, so not a big deal. But anyway, I want to welcome you to Marketing Mondays. We do this every couple months here in San Diego. We also do it up in Irvine, California at UCI. We're Evo Nexus up there. There's about 20 companies up there. And every once in a while, we'll teach up at UTC at the incubator up there, but mostly here in Irvine. And there's about 20-some topics that we give. So we can't cover them all in 1 year because we're not doing them every week. But it's a free event to you. Chris and I volunteer our time. We're two senior marketers. So I won't go too much into that, but just a quick show of hands and some housekeeping. Make sure you turn your phones off, so turn your sound to vibrate or off so you don't disturb your neighbor. That'd be nice, for one. And then by show of hands, and I'm looking around the crowd, I don't recognize a lot of faces. How many of you first time here? First time ever? Good, almost everybody here. Great. How many of you signed up on meetup.com? Okay, great. So you all came to the meetup area, so that's where you'll see the listings for these kind of events. The next set of topics actually is an announcement that I have to make. How many of you have ever heard of San Diego Startup Week? And a couple of you, good. So the flyers are out. Unfortunately, I was given this one. It's the last one I got in my hand. But if you go text SDSW to 55678. Hashtag SDSW. Or you can go to SanDiegoStartupWeek.com and it'll tell you the venue. And the good news about that is you'll see a lot of great speakers there. And you're going to see some people like us there. Just kidding. Chris and I will be speaking there as well. We'll be leading at least 2 sessions we know of and monitoring 1 session there. And the 2 sessions we're leading, they were very popular last year, was how to raise money if you're a seed company, meaning your first set of raising money, like angel capital. What you do and how to raise that money will actually show pitch decks of how money that was actually raised for companies, what the debt looked like, and what you do with that seed money. So you can actually get to the A round, the bigger money, and then what you would do, what the pitch would look like for A round. So 2 separate sessions, seed and A. So if you haven't had a company start yet, or you've maybe only done a Kickstarter campaign, and it's a low amount of money, that might not be considered seed yet, I would definitely attend these sessions. We'll steer you in the right direction on what exactly you need to do to secure those kind of funding and pitch well to companies that are actually looking to fund money. And something a lot of people always ask me, Chris, and you've probably been asked this too, people say there are a lot of companies out there looking to invest in startups. And what would you say to that in this market? People always come up and ask, so I got an idea for a company. Is there money out there that I could get if I did the right things?
Well, if you have the right business model and the right company and you can show a little bit of traction, absolutely.
Yeah, so what we've found in the last, I'd say 2-3 years, it's actually heated up. There's more money available to invest, but to the right companies. Investors these nowadays want you to turn or have an exit plan or at least turn profit in a very shorter period of time. And so you really have to be buttoned up in what you're doing, which is why we present these Marketing Mondays, so you kind of know what the right thing to do. So with that, and oh, by the way, it's June 13th and 17th. I'm going to leave this up here so you can read this after the presentation if you want an idea. Also, too, go ahead, Chris.
And also, Eric here has something called StartupShowSanDiego.com, so you can see videos of a lot of the presentations that happen all the time, plus interviews. Now I'm pitching you. You didn't ask me to do that, but plus interviews with other entrepreneurs and other learnings, all in video form, all throughout the year, but it's going to be heavy during Startup Week. So if you miss something, you still probably can watch it on Startup Show San Diego.
Great. And then the last thing is, you don't need to take pictures. You can take notes if you want tonight, but we freely share this information with you. We're a consulting company, not an agency, so we're actually going to show customer examples of trade show events and why they picked that event, what they did at it, how they turned it ROI, return on their investment.
Of the event, we're going to sit down and we're going to say, was this successful? So successful based on what? Not just based off of, oh, I had fun and the ice cream was good. You have to have something very specific.
Or we talked to 100 people, but you didn't sell anything and the goal was sales.
Right.
And you got 3 leads off 100 people you talked to. In Chris's case, a competitive position can also be product. You're checking the product out. And maybe you have 10 features that you have your team of 2 IT people, it's you and your partner, that do the coding on your product, and you're showing it, and people start saying, well, the one feature you didn't think was important, all of a sudden everybody's saying that's the most important thing that you should do next. So again, it's not what you think is the most important. It doesn't matter if you've been in the industry your entire life. You're so close to the trees at that point, it's good to get feedback from other people in the industry, because also industry changes. The find out if you're spot on with your product and the features of that product, or the advantages, and we always talk benefits. What are the true benefits to the customer? What benefit are they looking for, not what you think? Because again, at the end of the day, it's not what we think, it's what our potential customer thinks, because that's who we have to sell to. And that's the most important thing. And Chris and I always talk about that. We talk to companies a little larger when you do like A versus B kind of testing. We call it ABC testing. The reason we say C, did anybody remember this one? It's always my favorite pun to use. I'm going to test this offer against this offer against this offer. Guess who the third offer is? This is the CEO idea. So if you only have an A-B split test, you're going to test two offers, the CEO is going to come up with their idea, and it's going to be an A CEO test. Okay, you're not really doing a split test, because you're always going to have to test the CEO's idea, good, bad, or indifferent. So he's got a plan for that kind of thing. So that's competitive position. And then connections, we talked about this before, partners, resellers, and press. Every trade show we go to, Chris knows this, I'll be in the booth, I'm the guy actually that's in front, you could probably tell this by now, I'm such an introvert, kidding. I'm the one that drags them in the booth for the clients that we have when I go, even if I'm not an expert in the product, and then I point them over to the expert, because if I say more than 10 words, I'm already in deep doo-doo, because I don't know the product that well, just enough to be dangerous, to get interest driven, right? Testing benefit statements is usually what I do out in front, seeing what resonates in the eyeballs of people I talk to. And then I'll spend half the show going out talking to partners and press. Chris and I go around schmoozing the press and the resellers and the partners, figuring out who's a good match for this company. And a lot of times we find some very good matches. In fact, it's taken some companies off their business by finding these connections at a trade show, by not only having the goal of ROI and means more sales, but on finding the right partners to carry forward. And sometimes finding some symbiotic partners where we can sell our products together makes sense, coupling them together. So always keep that in mind as well for that. Okay, so talk pre-event.
Okay, so there's a lot of things you can do prior to going. Let's say you've selected your show. Go back. You've identified that you want to target sales and partners, and you've identified your show to go to. There's a lot of different ways that you can now promote your show or your product or service to the individuals. Number one is you can make an agreement with the show organizers and do advertising. You guys all know about how to do that. And if you can get the email address of the individuals that are attending, which some of them will give them to you, that's great. However, we have seen less than stellar response. If they say, no, that's for you, we see almost no response. When they give you the email list or you do a dedicated email, you get a great response from two completely different things. And oftentimes when they do they say, I'll do it for you, they're also charging a hefty amount of money. Just be wary of that.
Who are you referring to instead of? Is that the client or
The trade show itself. So the trade show
Trade show
events,
organizing.
people, organizers say, we have an email list of attendees and exhibitors, which one would you want, and we'll email it for you.
maybe it's kind of just case by case whether or not they could let it
So
go?
a lot of the trade shows, it's half and half. Half will give you the email list.
Do you think they want it?
Well, I'll explain why in a second. The other half won't. They'll just hold it themselves. They don't use email best practices. Almost none of them. I'm not going to say none of them do, but very, very, very few Chris and I have found. Because we're DR guys. We're direct response guys. We know good email practices, best practices. We don't see it out there. We just don't. We ask them, okay, when are you going to email it? How often are you going to email it? How are you going to track it? They look like deers in the headlights when we ask these questions. Like I hear crickets on the phone when I'm talking. They're like, okay, it's kind of going out into the nowhere's land. So we decide, I'll let Chris go, okay, no list here, we're going to have to make our own. So you don't want them to deploy. Or they'll do a blast with 20 ads in it.
Yeah, that's what they usually
You're lost.
And yeah, you're lost in the sea of ads. You're lost in the
all
flood.
the time.
Yeah. And you don't get to pick your position, by the way. It's wherever they feel like putting you, or whoever their best friend is, and who knows what the rule is. We just found out it's just not a good way to do it. Yes?
Do you suggest asking the trade show whether they give you those emails?
Yes.
Yes, that's what you do. You ask. They'll tell you yes or no.
And if they say no, fine, move on.
Move on. Don't pay for a blast. It's not worth it. We're recommending you, as your startup company, that's not a good use of your money. Okay? Selecting booth location. We talk about this for a bit. This is right up my alley because I've done, I'd say about a 90% hit rate when I pick a location. And the reason for it, I'm looking for one particular thing at a trade show. So you have an exhibit floor, and everybody's seen a map. You can actually get a map of the exhibit floor where all the booths are. Sometimes they'll even say who's in what booth, or they're just numbered. where would you want your booth to be at a trade, let's say a national trade show?
In the corner.
8 aisles in the corner. You say the corner. Anybody else?
Closest to the doors?
Closest to the doors.
Wherever the main flow is. Wherever
What do you mean by main flow?
If there's a central corridor, right on that,
Okay.
whatever the main highway is.
Okay, so far we're all close.
Piggyback off the most popular event.
It's not a bad idea. I've done that. It's worked very good.
You're the bar.
You're the bar. Actually, usually the worst place to be. Drunks don't buy. They drink. They only buy alcohol. In this case, free alcohol. They're not buying anything. So you were the closest one with that, and the rest of you are kind of close. So you want the main flow, could be by the door, could not be, depends on the show. And you want the cross aisle, if there's a cross aisle. You basically want where all the accidents are going to happen. Lack of better words, where all the cars going to gridlock. You want to know where gridlock is on that floor, and you want to be right next to gridlock. Because everybody's bumping in, swinging around, saying hi, and guess what? Your booth's right there. Easy to attract attention. Getting the most traffic. That's why the gentleman up front here that said flow, that's the closest. You want the busiest flow for your booth or closest there. One way is to tag on to the biggest, largest person, but usually large booths, they don't put 10 by 10s next to it. Not usually. And usually you're going to be at 10 by 10 or a tabletop. Right? The other is a tabletop right by the entrance door. Usually not a bad location. Tabletop just inside the entrance door, unless it's a local show, bad location for a national show. They're going to go right by you. You are a blip. Did I just hit a rock, or was that a bird I ran over? Okay, on the way into the flow. Okay, so that's a bad location. Let's say I've got a 90% hit rate because guess what? I've done all these bad examples I've given you. I've done them. And they're great mistakes. Don't make them. I made them for you. Okay, so flow. Look at the flow. Look at the number of attendees. Ask them, what's the number of attendees you had last year? And if they tell you 1,000, cut that in half. That means they got about 500 people qualified buyers coming. Okay? Half of whatever they tell you is what the qualified number of buyers actually come to get. Always. And I said that, Chris, the first time he looked at me, he goes, you think so? I go, no, I know so. Half. And it's usually pretty close to accurate at any show, including a national show. Okay, because they count press people, some count students that show up. They have a student day. I love it when they pack the students in your booth and you're spending all your time talking. They're taking all your free tchotchkes and pins and everything and walking off with your T-shirts or whatever, right? And they're going to buy 20 years from now, or 15 years from now. So they're not your customer. Not even good feedback because they're not even in the market yet, right? So those are things to think about on location. The other is, what do you have to put in the booth? Do you have enough stuff for a 10 by 10? Your typical standard booth are 8 by 10 these days. They've kind of shrunk on them a little bit. What are you going to set up in there for your location? And as Chris said, you want to extend into the aisle. So I always have at least 1 or 2 greeters. You're in the aisle and you never have anything in front of your booth, or your location. Nothing. Including you don't want a food stand. Okay, you want that clean in front of you. Serving alcohol in front of your booth at the end of the day, you might engage a few people, but usually they're very social by that time, and you're not part of that social. You're a booth person. Okay, exhibitor, unless you're out of your booth. In that case, they won't know who you're with anyway. Okay, so by that time in the evening, they've gone to their classes, they've been by the trade show exhibits twice, they're done. They're getting their free cocktail, and they're off to their dinner meeting. Okay, so on location, it's the traffic jam. Think of accidents. That's what you want to think of.
I also have one other thing there too, is, we did this once, and I think it was your recommendation. If you've not been to the event before, you can always talk to the event organizer, which we talked about. But also one time we looked at the other attendees, the other exhibitors. And we picked up the phone and called one that we happen to know, not in depth, but we knew them. They're not competitive. We called them and we said, you went to the event last year. Can you tell me a little bit about it? How did it flow? Where did people go? Why did you select that location? And 100% of the time people answer the questions. People love helping each other. So it's another thing. And again, notice how much time we spend on this. If you have the most amazing booth in the world, if it's where nobody can see it, it doesn't matter. You just wasted your money. And actually, the reverse is true. Even if your booth isn't great, but you have it in a great location, you're still going to do okay.
Anybody ever heard the 3 things you need to be successful in restaurant business? Yeah, location, location, location. It's the only thing that matters. Why? Because they want to know where that traffic jam is as well. It applies the exact same thing to booths. And that was something I shared with you about that, Chris, calling up the other booths. I've done that many a times. It's amazing. It's like a truth serum. They'll tell you everything. And they'll tell you things you didn't even ask. Management's a little tough. Management's easy if you ask them this question. Yes?
You can tell by looking
Yeah, so what you do is you get the map, and a lot of times they don't show you where the main entrance doors are, so you have to get on the phone with the company that owns the trade show. So I got the map in front of me. Can you tell me where the doors are that are going to be open during exhibit hours? Because they have fire doors, people have to be able to exit, but they're closed during the whole time, but they're unlocked. People usually can't get in. They usually flow them from one way. You ask them where the classrooms are, if there's classrooms, and ask them when the breaks are. How long are the breaks? Okay, so I was pricing a show out that had 4 breaks. Oh yeah, we got 4 breaks during the day. Tons of people are going to come by you. Well, it wasn't in the same room, and 2 of the breaks were 10-minute breaks. What can you do in 10 minutes when you're going to classrooms? That's the main thing you're going to a trade show for. What's the most important thing people do in 10 minutes? 2 things. Bathroom, number 1. Water, and the other is check your phone. Check your phone texting, right? Especially if they make you turn off your devices during the classroom, or if they're smart like us, we asked you at the beginning, turn it off. Okay? So that's the one thing. If they have a lunch, and they're not providing lunch, and lunch isn't in the room you're at, even if it is, not always a great idea, guess what people are doing at lunch? Even if it's 3 hours. When I said we got 3-hour lunch, we hardly saw anybody during that 3 hours. They all went out for nice lunches, and then did emailing until they had to get back to the classroom.
That's what we would call an unfriendly show.
That's a very unfriendly show. I remember we just sat there like this, and after a while, we started exchanging numbers with all the other exhibitors. We knew each other by first name. I had tested every product on that exhibit for us. We had no customers. Okay, I made that mistake. These are things to ask. They will tell you this. So then on my map, I'm marking it. These are the doors. I go, is one door or both doors? Do they swing this way, or do they swing that way? I get real specific which way they swing. Again, if I'm that booth, that mistake I made, the door swung this way, and I was in the booth right here, the table. Yeah, it was right by the door.
You're hidden.
Well, by the time they got around the door, yeah, I was gone. You could see me, but you'd have to look and see what happens. You come into a room with all these different trade show noise going on. Which way are your eyes going? They're not going this direction, right? You're like, okay, where am I going to go first? You got to think about yourself in the same situation. Okay, for that. So again, part of location. It's again important. Booth design. This is very important. Less is more. Not a lot of graphics below here. Why? Well, if your booth's going to be busy and you hope you got customers in there and you're 4 deep, you think they're going to see anything below the table? And below the waist? Nothing. None of those graphics making. Don't have your benefit statement down there. It's like being in the grocery store and you got your product on the bottom shelf. Nobody's going to see it. Okay, all your benefit statements are up here, so they have to look up and over everybody's head to get to the top of your booth. That's where you want to have all that stuff. Big graphics, waist and above. I've seen these gorgeous booths that look great when people are setting up. And then the show starts. Chris and I look over after we did this. Remember a couple? God, that booth looks hot.
Yeah.
When people come over and you go, oh, is that the same booth? Because you have the graphics you can't see. So the message of their graphic, half the message got lost because the other part of it that connected the top you couldn't see on their booth. So very important lessons.
You can also typically go on Google Images and go to the show the previous year and see what other booths look like so that you know how to stand out and make yours look different than the competition.
What do they give you when you set up the booth? Do they give you the table?
It depends on the show. So standard usually is 8 by 10 or 10 by 10. Usually curtains, if it's a union, curtains for sure. So you get the non-matching color curtains they use for 20 million shows with the aluminum rods that go across a little plate, right? A little stand on it. I always push those a little wider if I get there first, a little more than 8 feet. And you might get 1 6-foot table, okay? 6 feet or 4 feet long.
The show while you're there, just send them off.
Oh, yeah. I've seen people come back and say, I got your email. I was down another aisle and your email popped up.
You can even have MailChimp set up. Just type in the email address, press send, and boom, it's done. And then you track the open and click-through rate.
I had
and
somebody
everything.
filling out one of our lead forms, and all of a sudden their phone went beep, 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 beep. Did that weird sound, right? They programmed in there. And they went, oh, you already emailed me. You know how impressive that is to a person in your booth? What do they think your quality of your product is? Yeah. Compared to your competitors. This is how you get a jump on the competition. Have that series pre-written. We've seen this work. We maximize the leads, okay? Timing, directly into your CRM. What's the best CRM to have? The least expensive CRM. You all probably have it on your computer.
It's a cell.
Yes, Excel.
Yeah, that's
Chris and
right.
I's favorite thing, people say, critical. Chris and Randy, which CRM should we use? We go, do you have Excel? Because if you can't do it in Excel, you can't do it in a CRM. Okay, we usually build out CRMs for companies in Excel and let them import the data into some CRM they bought offline. Okay, and usually streams right over the way we do the fields because we know most of the CRMs require these fields. And so you build it in Excel. I live in Excel. It's what you do in direct marketing. You're in Excel spreadsheet. You want to have a drip campaign. You also want to have calls. You want to be able to call that person. Whether they said it's okay to call them or not, they put the phone number in or give you the business card, they've given you permission to contact them. They've stopped in your booth. They're a qualified lead. Okay? You're around the DNC law. Do not call lawless if it's a consumer show. If you've engaged them eyeball to eyeball and any word's been spoken or they showed up at a show you were at, you now have legal permission to contact them if you have their phone number. They've gone around the legalities of building a relationship. It's B2B doesn't even apply. You can call them anyway. Okay? DNC doesn't apply to there. Show specials. Always a big deal to have a show special. And a lot of times what we do is we extend it a few days afterwards for those leads to give them a chance to think about it, talk to the wife, talk to the partner, to purchase. We get a lot of purchases from trade show leads.
Yep.
A lot of purchase that way. If you don't have a special, people will actually ask.
Sometimes your number one competitor is apathy. Not now. I'll think about it. I'll do it later. That's a challenge. Direct marketing is used to that challenge, and we tackle it by giving deadlines. Everybody needs a deadline to get something done.
Or you do risk-free. Hey, purchase it now. If you don't like whatever reason, you risk-free. Return it. There's no cost to you. You alleviate apathy right out of that thing. These are very key things to do. Here's a typical, Chris, I'll let you cover this.
Yeah, and this isn't, these aren't real numbers, but we had this for a company. We did over 10 shows a year, trade shows, different types of events, different kinds of everything. We had to figure out, do we do those same 10 shows, or do we do 6 shows and select a new 4? So you have to figure out which one produced the highest return on investment. So what we did was, we said, okay, how many leads and how many sales were generated by each event, how much revenue was generated, and then we had to go through it. And so it's really important to track, if you're doing this, track what your true expenses for the show really are. And we would track that, and then we would go back in time. We were getting for this company, I would say probably 50% of the growth of that company was from trade shows, so it was really important to track appropriately. And it can be done.
And we track trade shows year over year, at second year there. Track sales, second year, third year at the same trade show. That one I moved booth, we tracked year over year for that. And that end-to-end case study, so I don't know if anybody did the math on them. They spent $166,000 on trade shows. And the revenue they brought in was over $200,000. You did the math and you added everything up on there. So it was profitable, it was an ROI. Spent 166, made over 200. How many of you would go do that tomorrow if you knew it? Okay, all those things we showed you, they deployed in the practice because they deployed us.
Depends on the margin of the revenue.
Well, they had good margin in the revenue. But yeah, give you an idea of the fact that it wasn't a loss leader, was actually making money. And guess what? They had repeat business built into their model.
Yeah, they had a lot of repeat.
So there's a lot of repeat built into the one. It wasn't a one-time sale, different product. It was a multiple sale. It was a consumable. So when they were done with the product, munch, 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 they had to go buy more because they just munched the product. Okay, so it was a very good ROI in that case. Repeat business. So you have to look at that part of it's a great add in there for you. So let's just show you, we're going to show you an end-to-end case study here for one of the companies we've been mentioning along the way, which, by the way, is this company right here that we created the Genius book for. Okay, and Chris and I put this together, I don't know, it took us 4 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks to put this together. We hired a graphic artist. They laid it out for us nicely on Upworks, which back then was, I forget the name of the site then.
Odesk, yeah.
Oh yeah, Odesk, now it's Upworks. And some nice graphic person made this look pretty with the Genius Discovery. And this is all, by the way, a stock image, an iStock that we took off of there. And we had it giant sized up in the booth. We actually had people that wanted to come over and take their picture, doctors, with the Genius guy. We tested it. We had the old banner on one side of the booth, the Genius guy on the other, and nobody will remember this, that the old booth, everyone take a picture. It blew me away. I was like, boy, that one image really, really worked. And it just shows you what an image can do if it's done right. Then we went from that to this image. We went off Genius guy after a while to Super Kid. Okay, every doctor wants to be a superhero. Kids look at doctors, and we look at doctors as heroes, right? Anything the white coat says, we say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, and we go do it. Okay, so go ahead, Chris. We'll start walking through this.
Okay, so so we had the ad that was this was in the trade show publication, so they had a publication going out distributed at the trade show, so we had the ad in there. But we also sent out an email.
So I see this. We're close on time. You can see we have some of the benefits they were looking for. Stated right there in the ad. Okay. Go ahead, Chris.
But what we also did is we sent out an email prior to the event. So in this case, what we had were people that we saw the previous year or doctors that we knew were going to the event. And so we said we're proud to have a booth at this weekend at Iridology, that was the name of the event, and Integrative Healthcare Congress. Once again, we'll be bringing a limited quantity of our brand new book, Genius Discovery, which we'll discuss, blah, 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 blah. And it says, if you want me to reserve a copy for you, we're not going to be handing it out to everybody else, is what it kind of says. Just respond to this email, only make sure to keep one set aside. So the idea was to get them to respond to the email in any way to engage them. So we had, I think it wasn't a huge, but it was probably 5 to 10% said, save me one. I'll be there. So you automatically got somebody engaged and saying they'll be there. Also, we have access to 7 peer-reviewed medical papers. We always have to add the science in there so they can believe us.
I'll go before you switch on. Look about it. The other thing that's important on this is we use a third-party notoriety. Remember we were talking about that you get a third-party speaker? So we got Dr. Benjamin Bonavita, who is not going to be at the show, but he's from a very well-known clinic, UCLA, head of the Department of Med. Okay, review the rules. We're going to show you the rules so you know how to break them. All right? If you disagree, it's okay, but we want real-world examples. So say, Randy, I totally disagree with that. Don't act like you're my brother and you just want to disagree, so we get into that banter that I get in with my brother. Disagree and say, I tried this instead. Sometimes we get some great ideas from the audience, so we speak up, because you're out there doing different things than we are. We have our experience, you have yours, and we're learning from each other. That's what this is about. This is a brain-sharing storm with startup-minded like people. Okay? Non-competitive, so we can pretty much say what we want in here, within reason, to do startups. And then do what it takes to be creative. You'll see what we're talking about. We get very creative when it comes to marketing. I always like to tell people I'm not a very creative individual because I am a left-brainer. I was a chem major in college, but I've learned that I am very creative when it comes to sales and marketing on ideas. And that's where my creativity comes out. I'm not drawing figures because I can't even draw a stick figure to be graphic artist. Okay? Anything to add to that, Chris? No? So here's the agenda for today. We're going to talk about the type of events, the selection. What type of event should I go to, trade show event? We're going to talk about the goals, and this is very important. You should have pre-event goals. Goals for the event and post-event goals. And you should have all these written down, and everybody in the company, if it's 2 of you or 3 of you or 4 of you, agree upon these goals before you even pick the trade show. Okay? And then lead generation tools, we're going to talk about systems there, and then real-time communication. Okay, but back on selection, type of events, we're going to talk about the different type of events that you could do, different trade shows. So how many of you are familiar there are actually different types of trade shows? Okay, anybody know, like, name me 2 different types of trade shows? The general public, sure. Consumer, open to everybody. Association for Education, right? There's 2. There's more. B2B. Yeah, you got to be in the right business sector to do that. Sure. Okay.
How about road shows? Just I have a company doing a road show. Would that be
No, that would be
considered an event?
that would you would actually do some very similar things to what we're going to describe. That would be basically your own mini trade show you're taking on the road. You're inviting people to like seminars. That'd be a different topic, but you'll see some similarities here with that. But good example, Bernie. Anybody else to add to that? That's a good mix of all these different type of shows. So what we're talking about here is the exhibitor friendly or not. Somebody want to give me an example of a non-friendly exhibitor show? Everybody know what exhibitor is? Who that is? That's you. You're the exhibitors. Okay, so name a non-friendly one.
NRA.
Well, not the actual show, but what does it look like? What was that show look like, Bernie, that you went to? That you said it's non-friendly.
Well, CeBIT in Germany, the Hanover thing, it's just like if you want a small booth, you pay like $50,000 or something. I consider that not exhibitor friendly because it's so expensive.
So it's not price friendly.
Right.
Okay, anybody else on that?
By the way, did you notice how this is the first thing we're talking about? There's a reason. Because this oftentimes changes your strategy from here on out. So it's really important. Yeah, go ahead.
That's like the environment has to be organized in the right way.
Yeah.
So when you go through it, it has to be done in the way that some businesses not survive and
So
others.
what you're saying is this is spot on with why. Exhibitor-friendly trade show puts the exhibitors in the flow, the traffic flow of where everything's going at that trade show. So if you have classrooms, let's say, and Chris and I've been to many trade shows, and all the classroom doors let out, and that hallway is where the exhibitors are, is that an exhibitor-friendly trade show or a non-exhibitor-friendly trade show? Friendly, right? You want traffic, right? You want a chance to engage people. Okay, let's say we had a classroom-style setting, the doors open up, goes into the hallway, and there's straight out to the street where all the food is, where they can eat for lunch, and downstairs to the left and up the hall is where the exhibitors are. Exhibitor-friendly show or not exhibitor-friendly? Not very exhibitor-friendly, right? Because what are the chances on the few breaks that they have, we'll talk about breaks in a minute, of them actually going down there and coming to you during the break? Not very high. So you're paying $50,000 to be down the hall, almost in the basement at that time.
So therefore, your marketing strategies will be different at a trade show like that, because all your effort will be to figure out how to get them down the escalator all the way to you. Totally different kind of marketing strategy.
Or you going to them, depending on how you set up your strategy.
And you don't want to get to the show and all of a sudden walk in and go, oh, I didn't know it was set up like this. Oh, this is going to be hard. You know, you need to know beforehand. So.
We've actually had, not our clients, but people come to us, tell us about shows they've been to, describe that situation, and go, I don't understand why it didn't work, or I didn't know that. And we're like, shame on you. Spend a lot of money. Trade shows are not cheap. We'll talk about costs in a minute. And you had a question?
I did. So I actually I was an exhibitor at one of them, and they did the lunches inside of the exhibition or wherever they exhibit, but the classes themselves are kind of far away, so not a lot of people that even go to the lunches or how. Would you consider that probably not friendly?
That'd be a non-friendly one.
Okay.
When any time the classrooms are more than, how many steps would you take?
Yeah, it was a hallway down.
Steps are this many steps.
Yeah.
If I can't see it when I break out of the classroom, it's not an exhibitor-friendly trade show. Unless everything else for that trade show, including the raffle, the keynote speaker is in the room with the exhibitors, unless they do that, which I've seen where it's down the hall, but everything else in the classroom was in that hall.
Okay.
Then that's exhibitor-friendly. That means they're going to coagulate from there, take their break, go to the bathroom, and then come to this room where you're at. Versus them have a choice to go to see you or go answer email. What do you think is going to happen at a B2B trade show? The typical person has a choice, check email or come see you, who they don't know. Which one do you think they're going to do? Yeah. Call wife or come see you. Which one? Well, that's a toss-up there, right? Okay, call kids, toss-up. Okay, but nonetheless, you're getting the idea. Friendly trade show with exhibitors and again, not one's better than the other, different strategy. Okay, everything we talk about is develop a strategy first, then develop your tactics and implementation plan, and then you actually attend an event. Okay, strategy is the first thing you think of before you even go to these things. You got to have a strategy in mind, a key plan to go in place.
There is one extra level of friendliness that sometimes you can look for. You know, when choosing an event to go to, we'll side on the one that gives us more freedom. What does that mean? That means possibly non-union workers. What does that mean? That means you don't have to pay for that, extra $700 for the light plug.
AK or that or drayage. You may know what drayage is. I learned this word. It's a union word. It means I drag your stuff from there to your booth over there. It's called drayage, and it's $250 a box.
Yeah. It's fine when you're a bigger company. It's just a lot harder when you're a startup, right? Now the other one is just happened this last weekend. Jen called me and she's like, you got booth number 31? I'm like, yeah. Do you know that your competitor just took the booth right across away from you? No, really? Do you want to move? Or I'm like, well, can you kick them out? Well, we can't kick them out. But, because they picked it. And also they got a bigger booth. In other words, we became friendly with the person who's running the event. What does that give you? It gives you a lot more options.
It gives you a phone call.
It gives you a phone call. So now I can strategize. Oh my God, they're going to be right across the way.
So you decide to go head-to-head with the strategy of that, or you decide to move?
Also, the ability to sometimes move out, like sometimes you can move your booth a little bit out into the area, and that means you can make your booth bigger than it really is. Some are friendly enough to allow that. Others are not.
Great ideas. So the other one to think about, so that's exhibitor friendly. Right? What's local or national? Is it a little local event or national? Which is better? How many think local is better than national? How many think national is better than local?
Depends on your
Exactly.
product, company?
It depends on a lot of things. Cost, how many people are going there, how many do you think you get by your booth, and can you get a return on investment?
And how many items do you have to carry and ship?
Correct. Correct.
I'll pick something local because I got so many items versus, shipping it all to New York, especially as a startup. It's going to be expensive to ship items.
Or if it's a national event and it's in Vegas, from here you could drive.
Yeah, right.
So Chris and I have done national events for companies in Las Vegas. They're huge events, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people coming in and hundreds, 1,000 or so exhibitors. Great show. Well, that's local, but it's also national.
Yeah.
So it has a little bit of the both appeal to it versus just being here in San Diego. So almost anything in California, Nevada, Arizona, you could drive to. And it becomes a national show. I just went to a national show in Phoenix for like a couple days. It was easy to go in and out, even though it was a national show. It was local in that aspect. So those are two things. Key targets and test targets. So if you're testing out your product and you want to see how much interest there really is and test out your key benefit statements, test out some of your marketing materials, test out maybe some of your offers, you might just go to a trade show to do some targeting, some test targeting. Okay, or your key target, you've narrowed it down now, you know what the key is, and you're only going to do those shows. So maybe you do a couple local and one national show in that market segment based on what you know from that show. Those are another ways to go. Partnerships. So we'll go back and forth. I'll let you.
Yeah, so sometimes, especially again when you're a startup, your primary purpose may not just be to sell your product, but maybe be to find others that will sell your product, right? So when you're asking for the list of attendees, you're also, maybe the attendees could be the other exhibitors. You might be targeting the other exhibitors that are there. So you just have to consider that, as well as speaker presentations. Do they have speaker presentations? Not all trade shows do. And if they do, can you be a speaker? If you can, obviously everybody knows to do it. It may change the whole game completely. You go from selling a little to selling a lot. That big.
To give an example of speaker presentations, the one thing you don't want to do at a speaker presentation is promote your product 100%. You want to promote education. And you want to lead people down the path that leads to your product or service by the education that you deliver. Okay, eliminating the alternatives for them. So in their mind, your product is the solution they've been looking for based on the presentation. Another way to do speaker presentations is actually hire or get somebody that's well known in the industry to speak for you. And usually what happens when they finish speaking, they have a Q&A period, but they need that room for the next speaker. So guess where that speaker goes? Anybody else have an idea? Yeah, they go right to your booth to sign autographs, to answer questions. Well, I'll answer questions. Come on over to booth 215. I'm going to go over there right now. Just follow me on over. We've actually seen the line of people march from the exhibit floor down the stairs, turn lean left up the hallway, and making their way to that place that wasn't user-friendly. Okay, so that non-user-friendly exhibit space all of a sudden becomes very friendly because you have a speaker. Okay, those are great things. The other is certification opportunities, like nursing is a good one. There's a lot of certifications in nursing and other industries where you could become someone that gives a class that's part of certification. Even if it's extracurricular. For example, I taught a nutrition class with a doctor. I wasn't the expert. I was the marketing sales guy teaching the class, but it was very generic in standpoint. It was an extra class they added. It was non-certified. We're the only non-certified class there. Yet we had 100 people show up to our class, and 50 of them followed us over to the booth afterwards. And we had a ton of sales right after that. So again, it was an opportunity that presented it to us at the last minute, and we decided to take it. So we wrote a 45-minute topic on nutrition. It was very generic, but it steered people down the path towards the products that were being sold in the booth.
When I worked for a company years ago called Pathway Genomics, we were selling genetic testing. And we were targeting doctors or physicians. And we went to where there were some certification opportunities, where we knew they were getting certified, the doctors, which is mandatory that they get a certain number of hours every year that's certification. And we knew that they were studying nutrition and genetics at that event. So it's a very specific event for us. There were 3 other tables set up in the back of the room. We did more sales and more leads in that one event than A4M, which was pretty big,
Which is
a
largest
gigantic
conference.
10,000 people. We did more there. We had every single doctor sign up.
Wow.
Versus, the numbers that go floating by your booth. So sometimes these very targeted events, very specific, because there's not as much competition there too, can do very well for you.
Yeah, and in answer to your question, Bernie, you were talking about, you can have your own roadshow that certifies people. So the roadshow isn't showing your product off as much as certifying them in a skill to use your product. So, it's an idea for you. So anyway, I'd like to give you an idea. Any questions on what we just covered so far? And you can stop us anytime you have a question.
Quick story, there was a guy invented a spud gun years ago, and he was at a trade show in Chicago. So what he did is he got a dump truck full of potatoes, and he dropped it off in front of the main office. I mean,
I might have 30 minutes to get as many people through my booth as I possibly can. If I get 3 30-minute sessions a day, that's a golden trade show. Usually you only get 2. 2 30 minutes, you get an hour. Think about it. You're there all day, but you got an hour to sell. So you don't want to be Johnny on the spot in that hour, or do you want to be sitting in a chair looking at your text? Okay, that's why it's so important you do it this way. And we've seen this at shows. It just always kills me when I see it. And like I said, if it's a competition, I let them practice. Usually they have, or we're not around. Okay? What talk tracks are you going to have? Who's going to say what? Now, everybody needs to know the whole talk track. Why?
could you switch off?
Well, somebody gets sick, someone
Yeah.
twists their ankle, going down the stairs
You
while
get
they're
tired,
there.
and you
Somebody
want
gets
to do that one at the
tired. So I got my trade show shoes on now. They're dress shoes, but these are rubber bottom. So I can stand them all day long. So they're made for it. I still get tired. So I had hard sole shoes on, forget it. Because guess what they do at a trade show? There's no padding. Okay, zero padding in the aisles, and very little padding up at your booth, and you have to pay for padding now. They charge you for padding. If you're going to be at a very long trade show, 4 days or more, I suggest paying the extra for padding. It pays off. It's usually $300 or $400. It's way worth it. You can stand much longer in your booth that way. Actually, they double. It's about this thick. And guess what? When people come in your booth, they notice it right away. They want to hang out longer.
Do they let you bring in your own padding if you wheel it in?
Carry it in and get away with it. But
If you have a
probably,
really friendly organizer.
yeah, probably not, because once they've laid the carpet, the unions laid the carpet, you can't pull it up. It's taped down.
Yeah, but just on top of the carpet. Just in
What
your
I've
boot.
seen people do is put padding on top of the carpet and put carpet on top of that, bring on carpet.
Okay.
I've seen that before. I thought it was pretty slick when I saw that. I was like, that's a good idea. I like that. I learned from that person.
Sorry to touch on this already, but the carpet, I'm looking at a conference that you purchase the carpet separate from the booth.
Right.
Not a union purchase, when you're required.
Maybe you buy the carpet or you're renting it.
Renting it.
Renting, right. Yeah, that's usually union and then third-party services that union has picked out to provide that carpet. A lot of times it's still the union. And they have different colors you can choose from.
Yeah.
Remember, they have this all sliced up by different 10 by 10, 8 by 10, 10 by 20, all the size booths. They have a pre-cut roll.
Is
They've
it-
used it a million times.
Is it a pretty large conference?
Yeah, it's here.
You kind of have to, because if you don't, you're left with the ugliest piece of junk that you're standing. I mean, you got to do it.
Well, it says it's required.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
separate from the booth fee.
Yep.
Carpet.
Oh, I love that. Now
And then you'll be charged for the trash can too.
they're trying to feed you. Yeah, I love this. I love this, where this is heading, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to pay for the cups separately. I just like where this is heading. Okay, so talk about handouts. Examples. So what are you going to hand out? Well, some of the times you might hand out a guide, a book, special for the area, something from the area, a giveaway, from a local place everybody knows. It could be any kind of handout, but something that the audience would want to get. It's like an offer. A 2-for-1 offer is no good if someone doesn't want the 2-for-1. They're not in the market. So it's got to be handout worthwhile. And we've got an example of one we'll show here in a minute that goes with this, but I'll give you an idea. This is one Chris and I came up with for the medical industry. I think I still have it here. Give you an idea. I do. I always carry this sample. It's getting old now. It's a few years, but this is a Genius Discovery book. And what's so genius about this book? Anybody know?
You put it at like a 3rd grade reading level for doctors.
Because it says genius on the cover. That's why it's a genius book. I'm not kidding you. That's why it's basically a very simple book about a particular part of an industry with education, and it's not particular to a certain product, although it has some of the product information and with some research in it. But we put genius discovery because a little Einstein doctor there, because every doctor wants to be a genius. So we went to their ego. That's why I said it's a genius book. We tapped into their ego. What doctor doesn't want to be a genius? Right? If they became a doctor, of course they want to be a genius. That's why they became a doctor in the first place. They wanted to be smart. They're smart. So we tapped into that, and we gave these books away, and we acted like, guess what? We only printed just a few. There's only so many of these genius books.
Which is kind of true. There were only so many. We really did only print
So many.
We probably had it.
Which made them what? exclusive.
Yeah.
So we packed on two things. We tied it into ego, greed, ego's greed, and exclusivity. Okay, we've talked about this at every session we've ever led. There's basically 5 prime motivators to get people to do something. You guys know what those are?
Scarcity?
Scarcity. Well, that's
Yeah,
exclusivity.
exclusivity.
We talked about that. So number one motivator?
Here?
Fear. Number 2?
Greed.
Greed. Number 3?
I think Mother's Day.
Guilt. Bingo! You got it. Guilt. Okay, fear, greed, guilt. And number 4, we talked about number 4, exclusivity, scarcity. And then there's a 5th that's now in play that wasn't in play 10, 15 years ago. Anybody know what that is?
Social acceptance.
Social acceptance.
Popularity.
And the reason that is, and popularity fits right into that. Think of Yelp. How many of you have gone to a restaurant because the Yelp review was good? Okay, I'm one of those. And how many of you knew those people that personally that rated that restaurant? You knew them. You knew their legit rating. Right, none of us, right? We trusted people we don't know to tell us that place was good. And we went in and hopefully it was good. Okay, social acceptance, very important nowadays. Even affects a marketer like me. I'm affected by it. I got to admit, I use Yelp quite a bit. And I have no idea who's rating that place that I'm looking at on Yelp. But that's just kind of how it works. Same with Facebook. Now, if people like it, you're like, oh, must be great because all these people like it. You ever stood in the wrong line at an amusement park or somewhere? Everybody's going over there, and you're like, oh, what is that? And you all crowd over there and realize, why not going to do that? Right? Same thing. That's social acceptance at working at its best. Okay? Videos. You have a video in your booth that tells a story. We had one with this one. We actually had a big TV. It wasn't huge to overtake the booth, where people were waiting to get in the booth for what we had because we had standing room only sometimes. They could watch the video and explain what they were about to do and about the product. And it's more generic, again, educational than selling. You want it to be educational. So it was actually a doctor who was using the product for a certain function and talking about the success of that function. So generic in its aspect. Third party.
There is
telling
a
the story.
challenge oftentimes with video, depending on the kind of show that you go to. Anybody planning on going to a show and having a video show displayed? Okay, one of the challenges that you may face is how loud it is if somebody can actually hear it. Okay, so there's a couple of ways to overcome that. Number one is create a video that doesn't require anybody to listen. There's 2 reasons why that could be awesome. Number one, you can use that for that, and you could use that for Facebook. Oftentimes people do not have their sound on while they're watching or reading Facebook. So the videos that you have oftentimes need captions. Captions are easy, almost free. Not free, but Austin's company does that, Rev.com. Just go online and have somebody caption your video. So that way, if you're ever see that where somebody's watching a video and then somebody behind them's watching it, they can't hear a darn thing, captions would help cover that.
Okay, something to think about. Lead capture.
Yeah,
So
like
a lot of these trade shows,
Videos like that.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that's right. With the captions?
Yeah, without like any, just.
Yep, it's good.
looks like a lot of commercials you've seen, commercials that have no sound and they tell the story without a word spoken.
Yep.
Facial expressions, tone, situation. You can do the
Cartoons.
same- Cartoons,
Do a
the
good
same,
job of it.
the same way. Lead capture, very important you capture every person that is a qualified lead. Notice I said qualified. Okay, what's a qualified lead?
Potentially get by.
Potential to buy your product. Okay, anybody else? Qualified lead? What's a qualified lead? Could be different for somebody else.
Two-way communication has happened, so it's kind of verified that this guy is real and has some interest.
Yep, could be a qualified lead, could be a purchase. They have the ability to purchase. Could be they have the ability to give you feedback. Because maybe your goal at this trade show is not selling, it's feedback on your position. So you want a qualified lead is enough people that actually could buy eventually maybe, but right now they're a legit person that would look at this product or be a product expert. Okay, so feedback could be the goal for that particular trade show. Yes, definitely sale down the line. Or it could be an influencer at their company. It's a good company and it's a partner. It could be a lead, a partner lead at that trade show. So lead could take on different look and feel to it at a trade show. You could grab a business card. There's apps for this. You could do giveaways to drive it, although giveaways don't always drive it, but some shows giveaways work very well, and we'll share some examples of that. How about those lead capture machines they try to sell you at shows? Those any good? You know, they're like a couple $100 and they'll give you all the information that people fill out online for the show, and you just scan their badge, those badge scanners. Okay, I'm gonna tell you number one right now, don't trust those. Don't waste the money. Use your own scanner, just your phone alone. There's lots of apps for it that are great. Because guess what? The information on their business card is accurate. The stuff that people put online, I can't even tell you what I've put online when I've gone to trade shows. It's like what position I have, the amount of money I make per year, and all that is BS. I put it in there myself, so I can tell you. Title, make up titles. So it's better off you get actually from the person. And most people that go to shows that are serious buyers, guess what? They've got business cards. And if they don't, I flip over mine, white on the back, and I have them write their information on the back. Have them write it. Notice I said have them write it. There's also apps you can have, tablet apps. You can perform. Chris and I used to have one where actually you hand it to the person to fill out all their information in, and it starts a process. We'll talk about that in a minute. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So, great. That's that. So, post shows. This is where most fail. Yes.
After the show, is there a, you actually speak to any given person before?
Nope. Depends on how many you have in the booth and how many people are going by.
And I guess you want to figure out whether they're a qualified lead as quickly as possible.
Yes. Should be able to do that with 2 or 3 questions. If you can't do it 2 or 3 questions, your product's too complex. You don't have your pitch down there. So benefit statement. Should be able to state some benefits and see if the light bulbs go off. Since I've been in sales, like now I'm talking to you right now, the light bulb's going off. I can see it in your eyes, so I can tell right away you're interested in what I have to say. Versus somebody in the other room, I can hear talking and they have no interest whatsoever. They look in their face, have no interest. So it's that look when you ask them 2, 3 questions to qualify them. If you create a new category, you're going to have to ask maybe a lot more questions because they have to understand the category you're in. If it's a Me Too product, meaning there's other products been in that industry. This is just a better mousetrap, easier to explain. Okay.
Should I briefly go through features, advantage, benefits?
Yeah, we should probably
Okay.
do that.
So oftentimes you'll hear the word, not often, almost every time somebody talks about marketing, they talk about the word benefit. So what does the word benefit really mean? So the way that I was taught many years ago and the way that we teach now is that there's a feature of your product, the advantage of having that feature, and the benefit of the advantage. Features, advantages, benefits. So does anybody remember, does anybody ever use pencils anymore? Do you know what a number 2 pencil? You ever remember teachers saying, grab a number 2 pencil? Okay, a number 2 pencil. There's tons of different pencils in the world. This is a number 2 pencil. The feature is number 2 lead. This pencil has number 2 lead.
I thought it was because the number 1 pencil was the champ and
And
this
this was number 2
this
now?
was number 2 in the pack.
The lead weight is number 2. What's the advantage of having a number 2 lead pencil?
Softer. Softer than a number 4.
Actually, it's the reverse. It's harder.
Oh, hard.
Yeah, but same kind of concept. So it's harder. What's that? What's that?
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
but what? But
Why?
go back. Why does it work with certain scantrons? It's
Why is it
it-
the only one accepted, not Scantron? They do ink now too, but because they couldn't do ink in the beginning, it's just pencil. Why only a number 2 pencil?
It writes.
It didn't smear?
It writes darker because it's heavier. It's darker.
Darker.
So number 2 lead is darker. So the benefit of it writing darker is. Yeah, or it can be read by Scantron, or it's easier to read. Okay, so people will buy a pencil because it's easier to read, not because it's number 2. So, right? So anything that you have to think about your features of the product that you're selling. What is the feature? What is the advantage? And then what is the benefit of that?
Let me take that one step further. If said the benefit of a number 2 pencil is easier to read, right? Let's say, for instance, you didn't care whether it's easier to read or not. Is that a benefit? No. So you got to make sure it's a benefit to your audience.
Yep, that's true.
If it's not a benefit to your audience, it's only a benefit to you. This is the hardest thing about running your own company because remember the ABC test? CEO knows everything. You're the CEO. Okay, you think you know everything, and what happens? You find out you really don't. You know some things, and some things you thought you knew, and you're finding out maybe I don't know. Okay, it's that benefit is the key. You'll find out from your customers. So qualifying questions is find out what the benefit is to that customer.